I'm Greg the Engineer. Today I'm going to show you how to set up a Pro Tools session that can be used as a template to record a full band for a record production or a rehearsal. The template is clean, it's neat, it's navigable, it's very easy to use. Let's get into it. I'll show you what's up. Alright, so I'm here in Pro Tools, and the first thing I'm going to do is create a new file. File new. I'm going to go through this fairly fast. I mean, you guys could pause, rewind, do whatever you need to do. I'm going to name the session. I'm just going to call it Pro Tools template or temp. And I like to do 48K, 24-bit. For I/O settings, you can do stereo mix, or you can reset it. Maybe we'll go through resetting it real quick. Hit create. The first thing we want to do is when we're on the Pro Tools screen is go to Setup, Playback Engine. Make sure the Playback Engine is set to your interface. This is a Scarlett. Sometimes I'm on the HDX I/O. Set the hardware buffer size to 64 if you can. The lower the buffer sample size is, the less latency you'll incur. Guitar players tend to feel it after around like 128. 256 is definitely going to be too high for most guys. Most machines, newer machines, handle 64 very well. This is going to be a real basic template. It's going to be great for tracking and rehearsals. It's not a big mix session, so this is a really perfect setting to start at if you could pull it off. If you do get clicks or pops or whatever, set it to 128, should be good. Hit OK. First thing we're going to do is bring in some new tracks. Now, every setup's going to be different. I have a rehearsal space next door, and that's set up with like a 4-piece band with a 4-piece kit. So I'll show you how that's set up. Obviously, it may vary for your setup. Over there, I have a drum kit with a kick in, kick out, top snare, bottom snare, tom. That's 6, 2 overheads, and 2 rooms. So let's accommodate that. So that was 6 mono channels, and I'll do 2 stereo channels for the rooms. There's still audio channels. And then let's see, we'll have a bass. We'll do 2 channels of guitar. That makes 3. A vocal for 4. Let's do that for mono. And then let's say another stereo channel for like a synth or a drum pad or something. We could change this, build it, modify it as we need to. For now, that's a good start. So I like to bop into the mix window. The first thing I like to do is name this, and I'll do it real quick. I've got kick in, kick out, top snare, bottom snare, tom 1, tom 2, overheads, rooms. All right, and then I think I said bass. Then we have guitar 1, guitar 2, and vocals and synth. Right, that played out just perfect. All right, next thing I like to do is quickly like color code this so that I can find things real fast. I know that my drums typically, I like this blue that it is now, or red sometimes. And the bass, I always like that deep purple. The vocal, I always like a bright pink. And again, this is just so that I can find things fast. Every session I do, every mix session, I always color it the same way. Guitars I make orange, and synths and effects I make this light blue. Great. So another thing you're going to want to do, because you're going to want to work fast, is I like to have a channel strip across everything. It doesn't matter what channel strip. Pick your favorite SSL style channel strip and go ahead and load it on there. I just clicked on the first track, shift click on the last one, option shift, plug in. I'll do the SSL channel strip, whatever, and it loads it all at the same time. Perfect. Next thing I like to do is have some bussing going on, so that I can easily set up some monitoring paths. So I'll start with the drums. It's going to select the first drum, shift select the last one, and then I'm going to option shift, go to a new track. And what this will do is it'll create a new bus and the track for us all in one shot. It's nice and easy. We'll just call this drums, and it's a stereo aux track is what we want here. Perfect. Now I do know that I like to typically have like a reverb, so let's just say I might do it on, for example, it changes all the time, but I'd probably do top snare, maybe I'm command clicking the overheads and maybe the rooms. No, not the rooms. Let's do the top snare and overheads. And I'm going to option shift click new track. And this is going to be a stereo aux, and we'll call this drum verb. There it goes. And then I'm going to slide this over next to the drums so everything is nice and organized. Now I'm also going to send this drum verb or output this drum verb to the drum bus. That's just so that when I set up my monitoring, the drummer is going to hear everything that's all drums, and everything and anything that's drums is going to end up here, including this reverb. Now, like I said before, I tend to like to have my effects and synths that light blue, and I'm going to follow suit with that. All right. Same thing. You might do the same thing for guitars, right? We're going to have the guitars, select the guitars, Option Shift, click, new track. We'll create a bus called guitars, perfect stereo aux. That's exactly what we want. Create. So now all the guitars, anything and everything that's guitars lands right here. I'll just pan one to the left, one to the right. That's very typical. And the vocal is kind of a different beast because we want the vocalists to hear their reverbs and delays as well in their mix. So let's kind of start with what we might do with the vocal. We're going to probably do, we'll set it up for a reverb send and a delay send. Then we'll take that vocal, the reverb, the delay, and we'll bust them to a stereo channel. And then we'll have that. So all the vocals, anything that's vocal ends up on that stereo channel that we can send for monitoring or pound the mute button and have it all done in one shot. So let's start with setting up a send to a reverb. We'll just do new track. We could use existing buses. I like to do new track because what ends up happening is it names it after whatever I name it. You'll see VX reverb. I'll just call it VX verb. And it's going to be stereo because there's likely going to be more vocals in the future. And see what I'm saying? Like it names that bus VX verb. It's better than having like bus 1 and 2, bus 3 and 4, than having to go back and rename them all. That's why I like to do that. So, and then for a reverb, for a tracking session, really nothing wrong with this guy. It's rock solid. And then we'll go do the same thing for a delay. New track, stereo aux, VX delay. Perfect. And then we'll grab this a generic delay here. That's good enough for tracking delay. The mod delay is perfect. And then, like I said, we'll take everything and anything that's vocal that we have so far. Option clicked, shift click to output to a new track. And I like to call this track all vox. So anything and everything that's vocal lands right here. There it is. Boom. And like I said previously, anything that's a reverb, delay, or synth, I like to have this light blue or close to that light blue color. So now everything and anything in vocal right here, anything and everything that's drums right here, anything and everything that's guitar right here, and here's the bass. Sometimes I would do the same thing with the bass if there are multiple sources for the bass. Sometimes you got a bass DI with a couple mics or a neural DSP and then a direct line. If I had something like that going on, I would group those together just the same way as I did with the drums and the bass and set up a single fader for it. The next thing that you might want to do, there's a few things. Track, I noticed in this right off the bat, we need to click track. Hopefully you have a tempo that you're working with. And we need a master fader. So I'm going to Command Shift N, stereo, master fader. It's going to name that master. That's fine. And if you have like any room correction software or anything like that, now's the time to get it in there. I do use SonarWorks, so I'll be loading that. That's my terrible room correction that I have to do. Yep. All right. Next thing I would do is super useful is to create some groups. So instead of like having to like click through each one of these to like record arm them, let's set up some groups. So let's click the first drum, and actually let's get everything and anything that would be record arm, which is just our audio channels for now. And it may evolve, so if you add tracks, don't forget to add them into your group. For now, we'll just pretend that that's all we're going to have. So I'm going to Command click and add the guitars, basically anything that's audio that's going to get recorded. So the guitars, the bass, the vocal, and the synth. And we're going to Command G, create that group. I like to call that group ARM. And notice that the input monitoring and record enable are grouped. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want. I do uncheck the volume because while you're setting up, if you like accidentally pull one fader down because something's too loud, you're going to pull the whole group down. It's going to shake you up and it's going to kind of turn you on your head. So just for now, we're not mixing. We don't need volume groups. We don't need VCAs. We just want to be able to record arm particular things all at the same time. And notice that like the mutes are linked. And then if I input monitor, everything that's, channel will input monitor. Same thing with the record. Likewise, if you were to do edits, the edit group, it's also enabled as an edit group. Now, there might be a case where like, oh, everybody nailed it, and maybe just the guitar player wants to punch in or something, or the drummer wants to punch in on a part, which is totally normal. We'll create separate groups for those. So I'm gonna option click to get rid of this selection, then click the first drum, then the last drum, shift click, and then create a new group, and we'll just call this drums. We're gonna leave it the same thing, mix and edit, no volume grouping, and also make sure record and enable and input monitoring is selected. And we're gonna hit OK. That's the drums. Notice that the arm group is off. And you can see now that the drums obey the group and the rest of the channels are ignoring that because they're not part of that group. That's perfect. And we can do the same thing with the guitars. We don't really need one for the bass because it's just one channel. Same thing for the vocal and the synth. But if the guitar guy, the way I see this is usually for me, it's one guitar player with at least two sources. But we'll go ahead and make this group. You can always choose to enable or disable the group. I think it's Command Shift G will enable and disable all groups. We'll make this one for now, and this is the guitars. Perfect. And then if we unclick the drums, we should see the guitars. Yes, they abide by the group, as we can see here. Perfect. All right, what else might we do? Some things I do straight away, just at a glance, knowing this, like drums, like the drum bus. It wouldn't be unlike me to just like immediately like pull up some kind of bus compressor. I do like to hear, that's not a bus compressor. Sorry, let's pull up this guy. I hate to say like there are rules or typical settings, but for me there kind of is. Like I like to hear it out of the gate with that slow attack, fast release, 4-to-1, ignore 50 or 55 and below. And that's good. I'll do that almost every time. Another thing we set up here was a drum reverb, but didn't load the drum reverb. So let's get that in there. Okay. All right. So next we need to talk about monitoring. So the goal is to be able to have each musician hear themselves and have independent control over what they hear. So I'm fortunate enough where I have this unit called a hearback system where I can send out pairs or groupings or channels independently, and each person gets their own, personal mixer. I'll put a screenshot of it up on the screen. And what it allows the user to do is to typically I'll send like drums to, on the personal mixer on channel 1 and 2, guitars 3 and 4, bass on 5, vocal on 6, click on 7, talkback on 8. Talkback, something we got to talk about. But you guys might not have that. You guys might only have one headphone output. If you have one headphone output, your workflow is going to look something like this. You're going to have like a splitter or something, right? You come out your headphones, you have like maybe one of those like art, headphone amplifiers as like 6 channels or whatever. You could do something like this where that output on your interface is, let's just say, for example, it's 9 and 10 as your headphone output. What you want to do is, this is just the drum bus for now, is you have to put that output as a send on each one of these channels, and then kind of everybody's going to kind of have to agree where this should be, because everybody's going to be hearing the same drum bus path, and then you'd have to repeat that process, for the guitars, etc. Now, if you're fortunate enough to have multiple outputs or a way of controlling this with something like a hearback system or an interface that has a lot of I/O connectivity options, you could do something that's a little bit more desirable, where you have a dedicated output for just the drums. Now, I would say this, if you do, you're going to want to make sure that this is pre-fader all the time, and you can kind of just zero this out, because what you're doing is you're putting that in the hands of the musician. They could decide on the level that they want to hear, and by you putting it in pre-fader, you can mute this. You can pull the drums completely out of the mix, and then it won't mess with the drummer. He'll continue to hear himself. So I tend to do that. So same thing. So like I said, that output 9 and 10, which acts as 1 and 2 for me on my hearback system. And I'll just go right in order. Guitars will be the next one down, and make sure it's pre-fader, and I just zero it out. And again, it being pre-fader, this could be muted, and these guitars will still pass through this channel right into the headphone mix of the guitar player. We don't have to listen to him. And same thing for the vocal. So we'll go with all vocals, output, just use the next one available, zero it out, pre-fader it, perfect. And same thing for the synth. Grab the next one down. Zero it out, pre-fader. And the bass is kind of a lonely wolf with its mono-ness. But we're going to do a similar thing. Output, next available, 17. Zero it out, pre-fader. And let's go ahead and put the next one, the next output to the click track. So so the click output to the next available, which is 18. And this is a beautiful one. This is one that you definitely want to zero out, pre-fader, and mute, because you don't want to hear that the whole time. Or maybe you do. I don't like hearing it. I don't like hearing the click the whole time while the band's playing. It drives me nuts. And we are missing one key thing here is a talkback mic. So you're going to want to set up something in your control room, whether it's just like a 58 on one of those little short stands or something. Find a way to get a microphone in the control room that could talk back to the drummer and communicate with them. So literally anything you have lying around. It could be like a Radio Shack mic if you have one. Control Shift and one new. For the talkback, I just like to make a mono aux channel. And another funny little pet peeve of mine, my talkback is always yellow. And we'll name that talkback. Oops, I had an extra character in there. Talkback. And we'll output that to the next available hardware output, which will be 19. And you guys might have to get creative with how you set your outputs or how you utilize your outputs. You may not have a million in and outputs on your interface, which is fine. I did it for a number of years just on 2 channels. Works just fine. Make sure this talkback is muted and pre-fader send so that your own microphone doesn't go through your studio monitors and blow them up. With that being said, I think that is pretty much it. Let me see. Yeah, there is a couple other things I might do. Is on the vocal channel, I might pick like some kind of like 2A or 1176, depending on like the style of music, just to kind of squeeze the vocalist down a little bit. If they tend to be more confident if you have a little bit of reverb, delay, and some compression on them. Now, I also have the luxury of being able to stick the singer in a different room. If you're in the same room as the drummer, you're probably going to want to use something like 57B, and you're probably not going to want to squish it that much because you're just going to bring more drums, fold more drums into the microphone. But if you have the luxury of isolating them, you can put a little squish on them, just to start with something, medium attack, fast release, 4-to-1, whatever. And what else might there be? I think that's it, man. That should get you guys going.